Welcome back to the Chow Time Pod. It's your host, Red. I got a video today from ChangNation. Asians, they're starting to wake up. I always talk about Asians being like kind of one of the original passport bros because we always go back to our country to, pick up wives. Now it's becoming true passport bro movements for Asians. And I'm actually a little bit surprised that Asians are taking this way too, but it makes sense in my mind. I'm just a little surprised that it took them so long. So please like and subscribe down below. I'd really appreciate that. And let's get to that chow. It's chow time.
There once were two friends named Chen and Chang.
I love how he always puts the two freaking Asian guys on like all his videos.
While both guys were similar on paper, they had vastly different dating results. Chen would struggle to get dates from online dating, and when he did manage by some miracle to get a date, the girls typically looked different than they did in their pictures. He would essentially get catfished over and over again. Chang, on the other hand, had too many options. He would have multiple dates lined up on the same day. Not only were the girls that Chang would date more physically attractive, but they were nicer, sweeter, and more feminine. Unlike Chen, who had no options and a scarce mindset, Chang had an abundance of options. Now you might be wondering how Chen and Chang have such different dating results despite similar stats, and the answer to this question is one word: location. There's a new movement on the rise.
I wouldn't say it's just one word, but location does matter. Remember, when you're an exotic of that location, everybody seeks you. Like if I went to probably Scandinavia or something, I would probably be looked at like, ooh, look at this dark guy. Just saying.
Also known as the passport bros movement, or something I like to refer to as geomaxing, where guys are leaving the US for dating. As someone who's worked in consulting for many years, I like to break things down analytically. So I'm gonna go ahead and perform a cost-benefit analysis, essentially listing out the pros and cons.
Gotta love Asians, right? Us Asians just love our charts and numbers.
Cons of geomaxing or participating in the passport bros movement. So if you're thinking about moving in pursuit of love, make sure to watch this video so that you can make a more informed decision before geomaxing or becoming a passport bro. So first, I'm gonna start with the pros, also known as the benefits of moving for dating. Benefit number one is more options.
Correct.
When you move to a country where the dating market is more favorable for guys, somewhere in Eastern Europe or Latin America, then you essentially perform dating market arbitrage, where you're essentially taking your same self and then going into a different market where you have an advantage.
Correct.
What this leads to is not only do you have more.
It's funny that he used arbitrage as the word for it. I wouldn't use it in particular like that, but I guess it makes sense because we go to balance out our market value.
Options, but you actually have better options. Now I know better is subjective, but from what I've seen, typically if you geomax to a country such as Colombia, you can match with more attractive women as well as women who are more feminine.
I do like Shakira, but her voice is a little masculine, but slightly sexy at the same time.
And nicer. Now I have a few theories for why this arbitrage exists. The first being, if you're a foreigner, you essentially get a status boost. And
correct. That's what I said. You are exotic. Anyone that's different from the norm is always going to look at it as exotic and sought after because they see the same people every day.
A lot of these girls like foreigners, especially people from the US, because the dollar goes further, it's more mysterious and interesting, and they might actually prefer the look of foreigners. For example, I know Latin American women really like Asian guys. However,
this is true. A lot of Latin women match with me on dating apps now. I got back onto dating apps, just trying out things. And yeah, I was actually going to talk about this. I think this is the future couple. The future powerhouse minority would be the Latin American community and the Asian community coming together. Because those are the two communities that are very similar to each other, are the closest in similarity. So they work very similar already. So they have very similar values and they work hard. So it makes sense to me that this is going to be the next, pillar of minority, is the Asian Hispanic mixtures.
In the US, not every city is conducive for dating as an Asian guy. So just by doing a simple comparison of preference, you can see that a country in Latin America might be better than a city such as Seattle for dating. The next benefit
Seattle, you're fucked.
of moving for dating is higher spending power.
Yes.
So this is under the assumption that you move to a location where the dollar is stronger. So this doesn't apply if you're moving to, let's say, the UK, but if you're moving to somewhere such as Mexico, then your dollar is gonna go a lot further in a lot of those cities down there. Of course, there are exceptions where you're more populated with tourists and your dollar doesn't
like
go
Mexico
as far just because of
Even in like Mexico City, like a condo or a Airbnb / condo in Mexico City is only like maybe like 800-ish a month or so, which is reasonable.
inflated prices. But in general, you can be confident that if you move to a country where the economy is less strong than the US, then your dollar is gonna go further. What this means for you is you can take girls on nicer dates. You don't have to worry about expenses of dates, and you can afford to live a more interesting lifestyle. For example, if you want to go on like a helicopter tour, if you do it in the US, somewhere such as Las Vegas, Nevada, it's gonna be way more expensive than doing it in, let's say, like Bogota in Colombia. The third and final benefit of moving for dating is lower cost of living.
Yes.
So this is under the same assumption as the previous point where you move to a location that has a weaker economy than the US, therefore the dollar goes further. But essentially what this affords you is the ability to travel and try out new places. If you're traveling around the US, the expenses can rack up, as nightly hotel rates for popular cities can be in the hundreds, but if you travel around, let's say like Argentina or some other country in Latin America, you can easily find decent living for much cheaper than the US. This allows you to travel and test out new locations more easily. And essentially what you're doing by being mobile and traveling around is you're just getting an increased sample size of these different cities. Now, I know I've mentioned in previous videos that you can just use online dating and move your location.
I don't really like that because you have to actually pay for it. I didn't realize that you had to pay for that feature. I was like asking everyone like, oh, should I move over to the thingy? And I'm not a big fan of paying anything to these dating apps, so I don't think I want to do that.
Pin around. However, I think that traveling to places in person gives you a much better grasp of the dating market.
I agree with him. I mean, yes, you guys can do the passport thing on the dating apps, but it's nothing like going there yourself and experiencing it for a week or two, maybe a month, and just trying things out, coming home and, you know, thinking about it.
Compared to just virtually. Virtually, you only get to experience online dating, but I'm a huge advocate of dating in person because with online, there's just a lot of different red flags. You can potentially meet up with a scammer that's trying to drug you and take your money, or you get catfished. There's even a much higher level of competition. So in general, I'm actually a bigger advocate of in-person dating.
I agree.
And you're able to do this when the countries you're staying at have lower cost of living and you're able to move around more. So that pretty much sums up the list of benefits, which are number 1, more options that are better. Number 2, higher spending power. And then number 3, lower cost of living.
Yep.
So the first con
definitely
or
the pros.
downside of moving for dating is that it's really just not feasible. In order to make this work, you need to pretty much fulfill one of these conditions.
Correct.
You have an option to work remotely where you still get paid the US salary.
This is what we talk about, man. You gotta, you know, up your game. You can't just leave without some of these resources.
You work for yourself or run your own business and can work remotely, or you're rich enough where you have savings and you don't really need to work.
Those are the 3 things we talk about. Remote work works. There's plenty of remote jobs nowadays. Or you're an entrepreneur, you're able to do work online. Even if you own your own business or whatever it is, you're able to do everything online. And then, yeah, if you're retired with a significant amount of savings and retirement already, have at it. But yes, you need either one of these. You cannot go without either one of these. You will not live a meaningful life if you are lacking one of these. Again, you only need one.
Honestly, if you don't fulfill one of these requirements, then it's really hard to geomax long term because eventually you're gonna run out of money and are going to need to work. And I highly recommend against working in the country you're living in because similar to the points I mentioned before about higher spending power and lower cost of living, if you work in, let's say, like Colombia, you're gonna be making way less money than compared to if you work in the US. So that's pretty much the first downside, which is probably the biggest roadblock for a lot of people to leverage this strategy.
Yep, that would be the biggest for passport bros, is to get the resources enough to be able to go out there and do this. This is why it's so ridiculous that women think that the passport bros are dusties. No, you need one of these that he mentioned. Those aren't easy things to get.
Is how unrealistic it can be, especially if you don't have the means of earning a US salary abroad.
Correct.
Now, the second downside is cultural differences. So I know typically when most guys are thinking about moving for...
It's funny because he's focused on Latin America, which makes sense if, you know, you want to geo-max the most for an Asian guy, right? But Asian countries, black men, white men, Latin men do really well over there. Asian men, not so much. I mean, I happen to be Cambodian, so going to Cambodia, I'll probably be able to pull a Cambodian wife pretty easy. But other countries might be a little hard because I look very similar to everybody else in like Thailand, Laos, you know, Vietnam and stuff. I look closely to them.
They're thinking more at a high level. Specifically, they're just thinking about how hot the girls are that they're going to match with. However, I don't think this is the best way to think about it, because at the end of the day, you're going to be living in a new location, and something such as cultural differences is highly underrated. One specific example is, I know in Latin America, they love not being punctual. And let's say you're someone that used to be in the military and you're a very punctual kind of guy.
I'm a punctual guy.
You might hate the fact that people down there are just like super late all the time, and that's just part of the culture.
Yeah, my friend is an anthropologist, and he told me, yeah, Latin America is very lax with when people show up. They're like, oh, we had a party that started at 10. People didn't show up until like 2. And I was just like, what the fuck?
So something such as that can throw off your whole living experience, because you're gonna have to go against your personal preference, and you know that con might outweigh the pro, which makes geomaxing not a feasible option in that case. Now, the third and final downside of moving for dating is it's gonna be hard to move back if you find a girl. So what I mean by this is, typically when you meet a girl in a foreign country, if she doesn't already have like a visa to visit the US, it can be a very long and cumbersome process to get back to the US. So
see, this is the part where I think, yeah, they're looking to how Chang is kind of analyzing it, is looking to bring them back to the West. But he's also talking about like living out there. So in my suggestion, just live out there, you know? Oopsie. Yeah, just live out there, because the risk of them changing while in the West is actually really, really high.
I think that's just one thing to keep in mind when you're moving for dating, because a lot of people, like I said, are thinking short term. They're just thinking about but if you're trying to date long term and more seriously, you're gonna have to develop a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year plan. And part of that plan is probably moving back to the US at some point.
It is for some. I would not suggest it, but you guys do what you guys want. I mean, I think it's better to stay in these countries and have that earning potential and buying power the whole time. Why come back to the US where you're back to normal again?
That's just something to keep in mind, is one of the cons of dating abroad. So basically, just to recap the cons of dating abroad, basically number 1, it's not realistic financially. Number 2, cultural differences. And number 3, long-term obstacles. And yeah, that pretty much concludes this video. Hopefully you guys got some value from watching this. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. Are there any pros or cons that I missed? Do you guys like these kind of videos where I give a cost-benefit analysis of different topics? Let me know. I love hearing from you guys. And with that, that's gonna wrap this video up, and I'll see you guys in the next one.
Welcome back to the Chow Time Pod. It's your host, Red. I got a video today from ChangNation. You know, Asians, they're starting to wake up. You know, I always talk about Asians being like kind of one of the original passport bros, because we always go back to our country to, you know, pick up wives. Now it's becoming true passport bro movements for Asians. And I'm actually a little bit surprised that Asians are taking this way too, but it makes sense in my mind. I'm just a little surprised that it took them so long. So please like and subscribe down below. I'd really appreciate that. And let's get to that chow. It's chow time.